Okay, this video is going to be, continuation of this book here, The Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes. We're going through it from A to Z. Right now, we're still on the A's. We're doing the anonymous quotes, part two of anonymous quotes. That means by anonymous authors. The best part of the A's will be Aristotle when we get to him. But here we go. Fast food slows you down. Fat people are lemmings headed for a cliff. The ideal job would be to work at an all-girls college as a music teacher in the woodwind section. I could look at that all day. He who takes the king's shilling does the king's bidding. He who pays the piper calls the tune. Basically, whoever's paying is usually controlling everything. And also, where did all this stuff come from? Basically, when I was in high school, I was pretty popular, an athlete and all that stuff, high status. And then in college, an amazing drop in status. I couldn't believe it. Basically, at Stanford, they really did not respect the wrestlers or the football players too much, especially the wrestlers. And they would even write letters to the newspaper saying all scholarships should be taken away from wrestlers and football players because they're a bunch of thugs. And so, obviously, as an athlete, we didn't like that. So it was very low status. I was shocked by how low his status. And then there were almost no social events. I couldn't believe it. Even being a popular athlete, even being with all the, I hung around a lot of athletes that became professional athletes. Okay, you could not believe how low their status was on Stanford campus. Okay, and I've heard the same thing that's like that at Harvard. It really stunk, the social life. So anyways, then I went to med school and it was in a ghetto, so there were also no social events, nothing. And the most important thing for dating women is being around them. But there were no women at Stanford. Trust me, I never seen anything like it in my life. And then in med school, it was kind of the same thing. Most of the people were locals and they would go to their houses over the weekends. And I had lost track of all my high school friends for the most part because there were no cell phones in those days. There was no email. It wasn't that easy to keep track of people. So I kind of got lonely, socially, and isolated. And my brother would make fun of me, calling me Rain Man, making all these Rain Man jokes. First you say hello, then you say how you doing, how you doing. So anyways, I started, trying to interact more socially because there really wasn't much social interaction. And I memorized all these comedy routines, all these joke books, and then when I talked to my father and my uncles and stuff, I had memorized all these quotes, and I started keeping files of all these jokes, hundreds of pages of jokes, and then thousands eventually pages of quotes since my early 20s. And I also, had it in the back of my mind that I might want to be a writer someday. So I was accumulating this because I read about writers. They all keep, a journal of ideas for their books. So anyways, I had the experience too, like when I talk to people, like I have this one Japanese doctor friend I talk to, and he says to me, he goes, in my family, Japanese, we don't joke much. He says, my family, we never joke. And he says, I like the way you joke. You're always throwing in little comments there, like a film finding that everybody's all worried about. Is this a big cancer? No, it's nothing. It's a tempest in a teapot, and I just had a case today. I was going over with this doctor, and he's worried about overcalling, and I'm like, yeah, you don't want to be the boy who cried wolf. And so you sort of spice up the conversation with all these things. And my mother used to do that. My mom was like the funniest, nicest person I ever met in my life. She was always cracking jokes, and even though she didn't read much, it was just, I think she was always talking in conversation. She just had this incredible vocabulary for making jokes. Despite the fact my father read more, my dad was smart in conversation and logical talk, but my mom was way funnier in personal talk. Okay, you can't buff a turd. You can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. Never try to teach a dog to think. It doesn't work and it annoys the dog. I would just say basically, what I'll say is you don't teach a dog how to read. I love dogs, and I think dogs got higher social intelligence than most teenagers, but there's a limit to what you can teach the dog. There's a limit to what you can teach certain people. And so I usually use some quote in the context of, you're not going to teach a stupid, incurious person certain things. It's just not going to happen. Curiosity, desire to learn, is a major, major part of intelligence, and it can make up for a whole lot of IQ deficit if they've got it, the person. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. After this, therefore, because of this, is how people tend to think. Beam me up, Scotty. There's no intelligent life down here. Yeah, we used to watch Star Trek when we were kids. If wishes were horses, beggars would ride. Half a loaf is better than none. Beggars can't be choosers. My mom used to say that to me all the time. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Pray as if everything depended on that. Work as if everything depended on that. No pain, no gain. You are permitted in time of great danger to walk with the devil until you have crossed the bridge. Gigo, garbage in, garbage out. What goes around comes around. Why buy a cow when the milk is free? Yeah, I think young women got to be careful about that. I see so many disasters, because I talk to a lot of young people, And they're not like we were when we were young. When I was young, it was 100% guaranteed. I was going to go find a nice woman. I was going to get married, have a big family, and have a big happy house full of family. There was no other possible consideration. I saw how happy my mom made our household. It was great. So whereas I see these young guys now, they're like, no way am I getting married. No way. Marriage is a ripoff. I saw my father get divorced. I saw what he went through. All these girls my age are too promiscuous. They say on the internet, a girl could be dating, all these different guys from all over the place. They said a lot of them are promiscuous, so they got this feminism in their brain. Basically, what a man wants in a wife is that she's faithful to him so that it's his kids when they have kids. Okay, that's important to a man because otherwise he's doing all this work. He makes himself a servant to his wife and his kids. That's a normal thing for a guy to do. That's why marriage is, like, in my opinion, the best deal a woman could get. Why wouldn't you want some guy giving you money every day, buying you a house? I mean, what's going to be better than that, all right? I saw my mom had the greatest life I've ever seen on any woman. There was no comparison. Once she had done having the kids, or started having the kids, she never worked again in a formal job as an employee. She just, she did things because she liked to. She's on the board of directors of an orphanage. She's, doubles champion at the tennis club. She was a tour guide at Art Institute, a tour guide at the Frank Lloyd Wright Architectural Institute. What she wanted to do, she would do. If she didn't want to do something, she wouldn't do it. That's a great life. Most of us, we have to go work because we need the money. So anyways, I think the younger generation's kind of mixed up. I think feminism really confused women. It's somewhat satanic. Feminism is really evil. It's done to gaslight, to destroy the population, to divide and conquer. It's not the friend of women. They think it is, but it's not, okay? Turning you against men. I mean, men and women help each other out since the beginning of time, and that's what they should do, and they both benefit from it. Okay, what goes around comes around. Why buy a cow when the milk is free? All cats are dark. All cats are gray in the dark. That's, I think, Ben Franklin talking about women look the same at night. Okay, he has a whole long article on that. If you lay down with dogs, you wake up with fleas. Yeah, you got to be careful who you hang around. Careful who you let your kids hang around because kids, after junior high, they don't listen to their parents much. They want to just do whatever their friends do. So if they get around with a crowd that's drinking or being stupid, they'll tend to drink and be stupid themselves. Once bitten, twice shy. If you chase two rabbits, you catch neither. The night is darkest before the dawn. Yeah, that's one my coach used to tell me. And, you have to build resilience in an athlete. You have to build resilience in any person. Things that build resilience are like stoicism, Christianity, sense of purpose. That's real important because in life, you don't tend to just climb up to your goal and achieve it. You take a couple steps up, get knocked back down, a couple steps up, get knocked back down. And so you have to have a strong sense of purpose and resilience and confidence in yourself that you keep bouncing back after you get knocked back down. Because most people aren't lucky enough to have rich social contacts that are just going to promote them. So they have to really work hard to achieve whatever they do. So, I've seen a lot of atheists really just go to pieces. They have some setback or disappointment, and they just go, screw it. Commit suicide, become drug addicts. I've seen terrible outcomes with atheists. I've seen terrible outcomes with divorce, where the kids just fall apart and ruin their lives. Okay, birds of a feather flock together. That's the same thing as if you lay down with dogs, you wake up with fleas. The big fish eats the little fish. Yeah, there's a certain amount of that no matter what. That's why the little fish should all help each other so the big fish can't pick on them so easily. Blessed is he who expects nothing, for he shall never be disappointed. Yeah, don't have high expectations about things that don't matter. Just focus on what you care about and go with that. Go hard with that, and you will end up being better off. Also, like I said, what did I screw up? I screwed up that I think I did great with academics and stuff, but I screwed up in that I didn't plan my social life well, nor did I plan my financial life well. What I mean by that is, I just took for granted it would all happen. I'm like, well, gee, my dad was rich. He was really wealthy. He was a double-boarded doctor, chief of 2 departments, made a lot of money. And I just figured, I'm a lot smarter than my dad. I'll make more money than him. But what happened was doctors got paid 3 or 4 times as much, probably 4 times as much in the 1980s as they get paid now. So it's different, okay? So it really would have been good if the best book to read is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Kiyosaki. That gets your brain started on thinking about finances, okay? And then I also always figured, I was real popular when I was young, so I never gave it a second thought. I figured I'll always be a real popular guy. I never had any idea what I was getting into when I went to Stanford, sitting alone in my dorm studying all the time, not knowing anybody, not just for a day or a week, but month after month, year after year. Man, did that suck. I hated it. I hated the loneliness. And then med school wasn't much better. At least I was back home near my family, but I didn't know anybody. All these kids that had gone to local schools had all these friends from their local schools. Okay, so anyways, I should have. What I'm trying to say here is I should have planned my social life a lot better. And what you want to be if you're a young guy looking for a wife is you want to be around lots of women so you can get to know them and you can kind of pick who's the best one for me versus just having to take the only option that's available because there's no other options available. It's good to be around a lot of them and you can pick the best one for you. Rules for surgical internship. This came out of Cook County Hospital. In the surgical residency. Eat when you can, sleep when you can. Lie, cheat, and steal in the interest of the patient. Only give out minimal information. Don't F with the pancreas. It's unforgiving. And that's pretty much how it was. They're on call all the time. They're tired, exhausted. They grab a little bit of food when they can. They would only give out minimal information. It's weird, but they were very territorial. And by only giving out minimal information, they could change what their services plans were on this, turn on a dime, if you will. It was kind of funny how they were. Everybody forgave the surgeons because they knew they were exhausted. They tended to be real grouchy. Okay, med school teaching. See one, do one, teach one. Basically, that's how it was. You'd watch the senior resident do something, then they'd say, okay, now it's your turn. And they would even send you off to do stuff. Like I remember when I was a medical student rotating through OB-GYN, the OB-GYN ladies had fun kind of, teasing the medical students. And they would just tell you to do stuff. Okay, go start an IV on that patient. I'm like, well, I never started an IV before. How do I do it? And she goes, oh, you know how to do it. It's not a big deal. Just stick the needle in the vein. I'm like, well, could you show me how to do it? And they go, look, you just got to hurt a couple patients until you figure it out. I'm like, you know what? That's not very good teaching. Please show me what I'm supposed to do. They really didn't show me too much. Here's a funny attending of mine. This is actually Andrew Sohn, and he wrote a good book on musculoskeletal radiology. The visibility of the sacrum on plain film is inversely proportional to the need to see it. Okay, and he said other things. So we used to have view boxes. There were no computers in those days, and a lot of people would come by, and it was kind of fun. It was much more social going over films on a view box than nowadays with the computers, and most people have their own computer, and they don't even talk to each other. Anyways, he would say either turn down the lights or pass out some sunscreen. One could say it's Vegas in here with the bright lights. Anyways, we used to have a lot of fun joking around. Everybody would be together in a big group. Way more social. Nowadays, it's almost becoming commoditized teleradiology, a lot of that type of stuff. Every patient deserves your best effort, regardless of the circumstance. That's an important thing for doctors to remember is that, because a lot of times the patient's some poor, pathetic person, and they'll have some big, prestigious conference to go, and you say, no, you do right by the person who's in front of you, whoever they are. Okay, the general surgeons used to make fun of OB-GYN surgeons. What are the four most common OB-GYN operations? Abdominal hysterectomy, vaginal hysterectomy, ligation of the right ureter, ligation of the left ureter, which is a big screw up because then you got hydronephrosis, obstructed kidney. Okay, then I had a whole bunch of nursery rhymes. I'm not going to read through all these because I think you would be bored of it, but what I'm getting at is, when I was a young guy, I had it in my mind's eye I was going to maybe become a writer someday. And I knew in conversation I had a lot of fun with all this stuff. So for every one of these nursery rhymes, there's always some joke that goes with it. Dice Clay, the comedian, made a whole bunch of vulgar jokes about these nursery rhymes. And I know from experience, they come up in conversation surprisingly often. And it's part of being a better conversationalist if you've got all this in your vocabulary and your background. It's part of being real fluent. If you learn a language, like you study another language, Spanish or some other language, you'll notice that one of the last things that a person learns in a foreign language is how to tell jokes, understand jokes, nursery rhymes, and all this stuff. So it's actually a very high, even though it sounds childish, nursery rhymes, it's actually a very high level language skill. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty together again. And that's a lot like what disease is like. You want to try to manage things right from the beginning, and it, of course, segues into the idea that almost all these patients have dietary diseases, and they all have the same problems: diabetes, hypertension, obesity, leading to atherosclerosis, coronary artery disease, cerebrovascular disease, impotence, and they got abdominal pressure syndrome from the lack of dietary fiber. And no medical surgical bullshitology can fix that. You can't fix that with a pill or a surgery. And your only chance is with the diet and the lifestyle, but you got to do it sooner rather than later, because otherwise you develop irreversible changes the longer it goes on, and you can never fully reverse it. You can still improve it, but that's kind of what that's about. So let's see. Greensleeves was a great song by Richie Blackmore and the rock and roll group called Rainbow Heavy Metal. They're one of the all-time best heavy metal groups. Other ones I think are fantastic, of course. There's Iron Maiden. There's, GNR. Okay. Um, so, yeah, I used to collect all these things, and, they just come up. If they're in your brain when you're writing and there's a good joke to make out of them, it'll come up. So, anyways, that's it. Hope that was interesting.